Some people think that being loud, aggressive, or confrontational gives them the upper hand. They come at you with loaded questions, twist your words, and try to make you feel small just to feel big. But here's the truth. Real power isn't loud. It's calm. And in this video, you'll discover exactly how to make someone aggressive walk away. Not triumphant, but reflective, even ashamed, without ever raising your voice. These aren't tricks for petty revenge. They're verbal techniques forged from the fire of Stoic philosophy, tools of mental clarity, composure, and influence. When used correctly, they don't just silence aggression, they elevate the entire conversation and, more importantly, protect your peace. You'll learn how to dismantle hidden assumptions, neutralize manipulative questions, and shift the emotional tone of any conflict without sacrificing your dignity. So if you're tired of being disrespected, misunderstood, or dragged into arguments that go nowhere, this video is for you. Watch until the end, because once you master these 6 Stoic verbal strategies, you'll never see conflict the same way again, and neither will they. If this kind of clarity and power speaks to you, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. This is where philosophy becomes practical, where ancient wisdom meets real-life respect.
Number 1.
Recognize hidden assumptions. When someone confronts you with a question that seems innocent on the surface but feels like a trap underneath, that's not by accident. These questions carry hidden assumptions, unspoken judgments woven into the very structure of the words. And if you answer them directly, you're not just engaging in conversation, you're walking into a cage that was built for your mind. The Stoics knew this well, Epictetus warned us. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because often, what people call foolishness is simply nonconformity. And when they ask, "Do you really believe that nonsense?" Or, "Why would someone like you think this way?" They're not asking for clarity. They're asking to corner. They want to bait you into defending a position they've already judged. So what do? You don't react, you reveal. Instead of answering the question as it's framed, you calmly identify the assumption behind it. If someone asks, "Do you really think you're better than everyone else?" Pause, then say, "I never claimed that." Are you assuming that because I chose differently? You've just flipped the lens. You've taken the light they tried to shine on you and turned it back on their bias. This isn't about being clever. It's about reclaiming ownership of your mind. Because once you start answering questions on their terms, you've already lost control of the narrative, Marcus Aurelius taught us. The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. In other words, if the question itself is built on ignorance, your job is not to entertain it, it's to question it. Let's go deeper. There's a form of mental aggression where people don't yell or insult. They frame, they build sentences that put you in a psychological corner. Like when someone says, "Why are you always so difficult to work with?" That's not a question. It's an accusation disguised as curiosity. And if you respond defensively, you're validating the frame. You're agreeing to play a rigged game. This is where Stoicism becomes practical, Seneca wrote. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, and questions loaded with assumptions feed the imagination, not the facts. So instead of saying, "I'm not difficult," say this: "What makes you think that? Can you be specific?" That small shift puts the burden of proof back where it belongs, on them, not you. Consider this real-world example. Oprah Winfrey, in one of her earlier interviews, was asked whether she was too emotional to be taken seriously in business. The question was condescending, steeped in gender bias. But instead of reacting with anger or justification, she smiled and replied, "I see my ability to feel deeply as one of my greatest strengths." She didn't let the assumption stand. She reframed the whole premise, from weakness to power. You see, every hidden assumption is like a shadow. It only survives when you don't look at it directly. But when you shine the light of awareness on it, it disappears. The person using it either has to clarify their intent or back away. However, this requires inner stillness. A reactive person lunges at the bait. A trained mind pauses, sees through it, and chooses where to respond. The Stoics called this prohairesis, the ability to choose how you act, regardless of what's done to you. That's not just philosophy, that's strategy, and like all strategy, it takes practice. And here's the final layer. You're not doing this to win, you're doing this to protect the quality of your own mind, because if you let others dictate the terms of your thoughts, you'll spend your life reacting instead of directing. You'll be pulled into battles that don't serve your values, your peace, or your mission. Stoicism isn't about avoiding people. It's about avoiding mental traps. It's about choosing what kind of conversations you're willing to participate in. And sometimes the wisest thing you can do is ask the question behind their question. That's how you shift the power back to yourself. So the next time someone throws a barbed question your way, slow down. Don't meet them in the emotional arena. Meet them in the arena of clarity. Instead of taking the bait, ask yourself, what are they really asking? Then respond to that. Not with fire, with precision. Because in the end, power isn't loud. Power is clarity. And the clearest voice in the room is the one that cannot be manipulated.
Number 2.
Escape the trap of distorted words. There's a special kind of frustration that arises when someone doesn't just disagree with you. They twist your words, exaggerate your views, or reframe your statement into something absurd. You say, I think we should consider another approach. And they reply, so you're saying everything we've done is worthless? This tactic, known as the straw man, is one of the oldest verbal traps in human interaction. And unless you recognize it, you'll spend your energy defending a point you never made. The Stoics would see this not as an intellectual mistake, but as an emotional test, because the moment you get flustered trying to defend yourself, you've already lost the frame. Epictetus reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And when someone misrepresents your words, the first thing they're testing is your emotional composure. So how do you escape this trap? The answer isn't to fight the distortion with louder words. It's to step calmly out of the frame and return to the original ground. When someone says, so you think you're better than the rest of us because you meditate? You don't defend your self-worth, you say. What I actually said was that I've found meditation helps me manage stress. That's all. You don't meet distortion with more distortion. You meet it with clarity. And here's the key. You must say it without resentment, without sarcasm, without that tight tone in your voice that betrays how much they've gotten under your skin. Because the power isn't in correcting them. It's in showing that you are unbothered, that your thoughts are still your own, even when they try to reshape them. Take the example of Carl Sagan, the astrophysicist and science communicator. He was often attacked by critics who painted him as condescending or too idealistic. But Sagan never fought back with personal attacks. Instead, he returned to the core of his message with patience and precision. When a journalist mocked him for saying, "We are made of star stuff," implying it was poetic nonsense, Sagan calmly explained the science behind it and let the facts speak for themselves. In doing so, he didn't just clarify his point, he clarified his character. Now let's be honest. It takes discipline to resist the urge to correct someone with force, especially when they twist your views in front of others. But here's where the Stoic insight sharpens. If your words can be twisted, then your real task is to make your thoughts unshakable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after." That's the posture of inner strength. You don't flinch because someone misheard you. You stay rooted and you speak again. More clearly this time. Another modern-day example is Brené Brown. She speaks about vulnerability and courage, concepts that are often mocked or misunderstood. In interviews where her views have been mischaracterized, she calmly reaffirms her original intent, never lowering herself to petty rebuttals. She lets truth do the work, and truth, when calmly repeated, carries a different kind of force. It doesn't punch, it echoes. Even in business, this principle applies. When Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, was accused of being too soft-spoken to lead in a competitive tech world, he didn't change his tone. He stayed consistent, speaking thoughtfully, slowly, and with respect over time. That clarity of voice redefined what leadership looked like at Microsoft. It wasn't loud, it was grounded. That's Stoicism in motion. So when someone misrepresents your point, here's your compass. Don't argue over their version, return to yours, and do it slowly. Say, that's not what I said. What I meant was, and then restate it, not with fire, but with precision and poise. Let them feel the calm in your voice. Let them notice that no matter how they twist, they cannot shake your center. This is verbal judo. It's not about overpowering, it's about redirecting, and the one who remains calm in the storm becomes the anchor others look to. In that moment, you're not just escaping the straw man, you're revealing who actually controls the room. So next time your words are twisted, don't take the bait, return to the truth, speak it clearly, and leave it at that. Because in the end, the clearest person in the room always wins, not by force, but by being unshakably understood.
Number 3.
Handle judgmental questions. Some questions are not questions. They're verdicts in disguise. They sound like curiosity, but feel like a trap. Why don't you have kids yet? You're still at that job? You really think that's a smart use of your time? These aren't innocent inquiries. They're subtle attacks designed to make you feel wrong, embarrassed, or out of step. And if you're not prepared, you'll find yourself explaining your life to someone who never deserved the explanation. The Stoics would tell you this. Don't justify, affirm, and redirect. When someone tries to corner you with a judgmental question, understand this. They're not seeking to understand. They're seeking to assert dominance. And the moment you start explaining yourself, you've given them the power to frame your values as mistakes. That's why the Stoic response is not defensiveness. It's inner conviction. Marcus Aurelius said, "The opinion of someone else should never determine the worth of your action. If you chose it in accordance with reason, with integrity, then let it stand. You don't need to explain your solitude, your minimalism, your late nights, your silence. These are your choices. If they make someone uncomfortable, that says more about their values than yours." So how do you respond? You respond with presence. You say, "That's a choice I've made because it matters to me." Then ask them something. What's been meaningful to you lately? In one move, you affirm your values and you invite conversation instead of conflict. You shift from defense to direction, and that's where real composure lives. Let's look at a real example. When Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Workweek, first began sharing his philosophy about work-life design, people ridiculed him. "So you're just lazy? You don't want a real job?" But instead of defending, Ferriss calmly explained the outcomes. Freedom of time, mental clarity, higher performance through selective effort. He didn't argue for approval, he illustrated results. And over time, the questions faded. Why? Because results speak louder than rebuttals. Still, the urge to justify runs deep, especially when the judgment comes from family, old friends, or respected peers. But here's the Stoic correction. The more at peace you are with your choices, the less they require performance. Seneca said, "A good character, when established, becomes effective without speech." So don't rush to explain. Let the way you live be the final word. Oprah Winfrey once said that the most common question she received after any interview was that person genuine? Not were they right or were they smart, but were they centered? People don't remember all your arguments, they remember your energy. So when you respond to a judgmental question with grace, you teach without preaching. The deeper truth is this: judgmental questions are often projections. People question you harshly in the areas they feel least secure about in themselves. When you live differently, you remind them of the choices they didn't make or were too afraid to try. And so their question is really about them, not you. A Stoic sees this, not with pride, but with understanding. He doesn't react. He sees through. Of course, this doesn't mean you ignore people or shut down conversation. It means you choose your ground. You keep the dialogue on terms that nourish, not drain. When someone asks, "Why do you always keep to yourself?" you might reply, "I find strength in stillness." That's not defense, that's clarity, and clarity disarms. In practical terms, you can turn the dynamic around. Take a question meant to shrink you and use it as a mirror. "Why haven't you bought a house yet?" becomes, "I've chosen mobility over ownership for now." What's your experience been with that? You've just flipped the power, without aggression, because the goal is not to win, it's to lead the conversation back to truth. And that requires restraint, resisting the temptation to argue, to prove, to convince. The Stoic is not moved by public opinion or private judgment. He is moved by reason, by principle, by his own chosen path. So next time you're hit with a loaded question, pause, breathe, feel the desire to explain, and let it go. Then speak only from clarity, not from insecurity. You don't owe anyone a defense for your peace, because in the end, people will forget your answers, but they will remember how centered you were when they tried to shake you and couldn't.
Number 4.
Respect the truth. Don't create a straw man. It's tempting, isn't it? When someone distorts your words, misunderstands your intent, or takes a shot at your character, the impulse is to strike back, to give them a taste of their own medicine. If they twist your message, why not twist theirs? If they exaggerate, why not overcorrect? It feels like justice, but it's actually poison. Because in that moment, you've lowered yourself. You've traded clarity for cleverness, strength for superiority, virtue for vengeance. And a Stoic knows that trade is never worth it. Epictetus warned, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." When someone is misrepresenting you, their mind is already closed, but when you misrepresent them in return, you close your own. And now no one's listening, only reacting. That's not a conversation, that's just noise. So here's the Stoic path. Even when others distort, you don't. You speak with precision, you define your terms, you represent their view with honesty, even if they didn't offer you the same. Why? Because your words reflect your character, and your character must never depend on someone else's behavior. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That includes mentally, that includes intellectually. The person who remains honest when others lie is not weak, he is free. In practice, this means you avoid building straw men, even when it's easy, especially when it's easy. If someone says, "I think we need stricter discipline in schools," don't reply, "So you're saying we should punish children all the time?" That's not their argument, it's a distortion, and when you do that, you don't win. You just reveal that you weren't really listening. Instead, pause, clarify. Say, "Do you mean you think structure helps students perform better?" You've just made the conversation cleaner, calmer, and more meaningful. That's leadership. Barack Obama was a master of this. During presidential debates, he would often rephrase his opponent's argument more clearly than they did themselves, before gently disagreeing. That's what made him persuasive. He didn't attack people. He engaged ideas, and because he respected his opponent's reasoning, even when flawed, he showed the audience that he was bigger than the moment. And here's the truth. The better you get at listening, the less you need to exaggerate anyone's position. Seneca said, "It is more civilized to make fun of life than to bewail it." He meant that lightness, understanding, and wisdom are far more effective than outrage. When you understand someone's real position, you can challenge it at its root, not at its shadow. The writer Alain de Botton once noted that many arguments aren't about ideas, they're about status. When people exaggerate others' positions, it's often because they want to look smarter, stronger, more right. But the Stoic doesn't argue for applause. He speaks for alignment. He doesn't need to humiliate. He needs to be clear. Even in high-stakes environments, boardrooms, media interviews, classrooms, the same rule applies. The people who make the biggest impression aren't the ones who interrupt, distort, or dominate. They're the ones who remain composed, speak clearly, and let the strength of truth carry their voice. And let's be honest, it takes strength to hold the line. When someone is sarcastic, petty, or manipulative, it's natural to want to mirror their tone. But mirroring darkness just brings more darkness. The Stoic doesn't react that way. He elevates. He stays centered. He answers distorted speech with exact language. And if the other person refuses to meet that honesty, he walks away. Because again, the goal is not to win. It's to remain true, to protect the kind of mind you're building, to practice what Marcus called being the marble column that the storm breaks against but does not shake. So next time someone speaks in half-truths, don't correct with revenge, correct with precision. Don't be theatrical. Be surgical. Speak less, but say more. And if you choose to challenge someone's view, challenge what they actually said, not the version that's easier to knock down. Because the moment you twist someone's words, even if you win the argument, you lose something greater, your integrity. And in the long run, nothing earns more respect than the person who disagrees without deception and keeps his voice clear in a world full of noise.
Number 5.
Use visual imagery. Words are powerful, but images, metaphors, and analogies can bypass the ego and speak directly to the soul. This is why, when logic fails or tension rises, the Stoic mind turns to image-based speech, because sometimes what you describe lands deeper than what you declare. Stoicism doesn't teach us to out-debate others. It teaches us to connect with what's real. Seneca wrote, "A picture is a poem without words." And in verbal conflict, painting a picture can cool the flame faster than facts because it doesn't feel like an attack. It feels like a mirror. Imagine someone lashing out at you in anger, claiming you failed them, disappointed them, ruined everything. You could argue, you could bring receipts, or you could say, when a pond is stirred, the mud rises, and nothing is clear. That's what anger does to the mind. In a single sentence, you've said everything and provoked nothing. This is the magic of metaphor. It's soft on the ears but sharp on the mind. It allows people to see themselves without being told who they are. It guides rather than confronts. And that's why the Stoics used it often, not as decoration, but as a tool of clarity and peace. Marcus Aurelius used imagery constantly in his meditations. He wrote, "Don't be like the dancing puppet pulled by strings." That's not a lecture. It's a vision. You can see it, a man animated by other people's expectations. And once you see it, you remember it. That's the point. Or take the example of Eckhart Tolle in a tense interview when someone challenged his message about inner peace. He didn't argue. He said, "The duck shakes off the water and moves on. Humans carry the story for years. No shouting, no resistance, just an image. And that image speaks louder than explanation." Even therapists know this power. Dr. Gabor Mate often uses metaphors to describe emotional injury. He says, trauma isn't what happens to you. It's what happens inside you as a result. This reframing invites reflection, it removes blame, and replaces it with vision. This method isn't about sounding poetic, it's about lowering defenses. When someone is aggressive, they're expecting opposition. But when you offer a metaphor, it doesn't match their force, it redirects it. You might say, trying to force this moment is like pulling open a flower. It only damages the bloom. Suddenly the tone shifts, not because you overpower them, but because you show them a reflection. And here's where the Stoic advantage emerges. Metaphors come from presence, from awareness, from stillness. You can't deliver a grounded image if you're emotionally scattered. So this practice isn't just about speech, it's about state. When your mind is clear, your language follows. A stormy voice cannot paint calm pictures, but a steady soul can move mountains without force. Another real-world example, Mr. Rogers, in moments of tension, he would use gentle illustrations to convey serious truths. He once said, "Feelings are like rain, they come and they go. They don't define the sky." That's not just comforting, it's disarming. It takes the weight out of the moment and returns you to perspective. Barack Obama also used this often. When people attacked him or misunderstood his message, he'd say things like, "We're not red states or blue states, we're the United States." It's an image, a unifying one. And because it invited people to see beyond the moment, it worked. And the beauty is, this works not only in conflict, but in daily life. Conversations with loved ones, co-workers, or strangers all open up when we stop trying to win and start trying to reflect. Metaphors are not weapons, they're bridges, and bridges connect even when disagreement remains. But let's be clear, this only works when it's sincere. A metaphor forced is worse than no metaphor at all. You can't fake groundedness. That's why the Stoics didn't rehearse lines. They rehearsed their state of being. If your heart is steady, your words will carry that steadiness. The image will land because it's coming from truth, not strategy. So when someone comes at you with emotion, don't match it, slow your breath, find stillness. And when you speak, speak from vision, not to win, but to invite reflection. Because the goal isn't to silence people, it's to help them hear without needing to shout. And nothing opens the mind faster than a clear image that bypasses pride and speaks to the soul. Number 6, reveal shared values, find common ground. There's a moment in every tense conversation where both people stop hearing each other. One is pushing, the other is resisting. Both feel justified, both feel unheard. And under that noise, something powerful is hiding, a shared value. But unless someone reaches for it, it stays buried under pride. The Stoics teach us that human beings, despite all appearances, are unified by nature. We may speak differently, believe differently, live differently, but we suffer the same, hope the same, want the same peace. Epictetus said, "Nature gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we might listen twice as much as we speak." And when we truly listen, not just to the words, but to the motive, we start hearing something beneath the conflict, a desire for truth, dignity, fairness, respect. So when someone criticizes you, don't just react to the surface. Listen for the root. Maybe their words are harsh, but behind them is care. Maybe they're angry because they felt excluded. Maybe they raised their voice because they felt dismissed. Your job as a Stoic communicator is to extract the principle beneath the posture. Here's how it looks in action. Imagine someone says, "You never listened to me." You could argue, you could deny, or you could say, "It sounds like feeling heard matters to you. That matters to me too." In that one shift, you've taken the conversation from opposition to alignment. You've named the value. You've built the bridge. This doesn't mean you agree with everything they say. It means you affirm the motive. I see that you care about getting this right. It's clear that being respected is important to you. These are statements that melt walls because deep down, the desire to be understood is universal. Mr. Rogers once said, "There isn't anyone you couldn't learn to love once you've heard their story." That's not about excusing behavior. It's about seeing the human behind it. And when you speak to that humanity, even the most offensive person begins to soften. Consider how Nelson Mandela, after decades of unjust imprisonment, began reconciliation not with anger, but with empathy. He looked for common ground with former adversaries. He said, "If you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with your enemy. Then he becomes your partner." It wasn't naivety, it was strategy, a Stoic one. To find shared values, you must first value silence, observation, patience. The loudest person in the room rarely hears the truth, but the calmest one, he picks up everything. He listens for what's not being said, and then he reflects it back, not to manipulate, but to heal. You might hear criticism and respond, "You seem really invested in this. I respect that." Or when someone challenges your methods, say, "Sounds like we both care about getting good results. We just see different paths." That's not weakness, that's leadership. It also works with strangers. A customer lashes out? Say, "I can see this situation matters to you." A colleague undermines you in a meeting? Say, "We both want what's best for the team. I appreciate your passion." It doesn't guarantee agreement, but it creates space for it. And space is where transformation begins. Still, this practice isn't just about what you say, it's about what you see. You must train your mind to search beneath the insult for the value, beneath the noise for the need. This requires awareness, it requires humility, but it also gives you something rare in human communication, influence without force. And of course, this approach takes strength, inner restraint, emotional maturity. It's much easier to retaliate, to one-up, to dismiss. But as Marcus Aurelius said, kindness is invincible if it's sincere, not because it avoids the fight, but because it reveals there was no real enemy to begin with. So the next time someone comes at you hard, look deeper. Instead of defending yourself, search for the value they're fighting for. Acknowledge it, echo it, build on it. Because when you reveal common ground, you do something rare in today's world. You lead not with force, but with understanding. And the person who can make others feel seen without surrendering his truth is the one who changes conversations, changes relationships, and sometimes changes lives. Conflict doesn't always need a winner. Sometimes it just needs a grown mind. One that doesn't flinch at aggression, one that doesn't bend to ego, one that speaks not to dominate, but to direct. You've now learned 6 Stoic strategies, not to silence others, but to protect your clarity. And clarity, when spoken with calm, can turn confrontation into understanding, and sometimes even regret. You don't have to raise your voice to be powerful. You just have to raise your standard for how you think, how you listen, and how you speak. So the next time someone tries to shake your peace, remember, you don't owe them anger. You owe yourself composure. That's the Stoic way. And if you found value here, make sure to like this video and subscribe. This is where philosophy becomes armor and clarity becomes your quietest form of strength. Stay grounded, speak wisely, and walk away only when you've won your peace.